I just want to take you through some of the more pertinent outcomes of CITES. So just by way of introduction, CITES came into force in 1975. The aims are to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival. South Africa has been a party to CITES since 1975, and there are about 183 parties to CITES. And the Conference of Parties meets every 2 to 3 years. And as I said, recently held in August in Geneva, COP18. And in terms of proposals, there were a total of 57 proposals for listing submitted by 90 countries. And in addition to that, there were several other proposals, not really for listing, but for other issues that were also discussed at the COP. So I thought it was important, before we start discussing the outcomes, is just to highlight what CITES is about and what are the conditions for listing. Because often people misunderstand what the whole tool is, what CITES is all about. So the conditions for listing in CITES: to qualify for inclusion in Appendix 1, a species must meet biological and trade criteria. Not just the biological, but there has to be a trade issue involved there. Species may be listed in Appendix 2 to avoid utilization that is incompatible with their survival, and in order that trade may be brought under effective control. Again, the word trade. Okay, conditions for amending CITES listings: to remove a species listed in Appendix 1 from the appendices, it first must be transferred to Appendix 2. Can't go directly from being listed in Appendix 1 and taken off the listings. It's got to go back to Appendix 2, and it has to be there for at least 2 intervals of the COP, which is around 6 years. No species should be deleted from Appendix 2 if such deletion is likely to result in it qualifying for inclusion in the appendices in the near future. Again, that's obvious. So species in Appendix 1 should only be transferred to Appendix 2 under the following conditions. Obviously, the species, if it does not satisfy the relevant criteria for Appendix 1, the species is not in demand for international trade, the species is in demand for trade, but there are effective management and enforcement controls in place, or the amendment proposal is in the form of an export quota or other measure that will have effective enforcement controls, or it's a ranching proposal. So the biological criteria for listing in Appendix 1, all right, a species must be threatened with extinction and should meet at least one of the following criteria. I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially the wild population is small, the wild population has a restricted area of distribution, or there has been a marked decline in population size in the wild. A species should be included in Appendix 2 when, on the basis of available trade data and information on the status and trends of the wild population, at least one of the following criteria is met. Okay, it is known or can be inferred or projected that the regulation of trade in the species is necessary to avoid it becoming eligible for inclusion in Appendix 1. Or it is known or can be inferred or projected that the regulation of trade in the species is required to ensure that the harvest of specimens from the wild is not reducing the wild population to a level at which its survival might be threatened by continued harvesting or other influences. So, the first of the proposals that we're looking at CITES COP18 was a proposal by South Africa to amend the listing of Allopterox in Appendix 2, or amend the annotation rather, by amending annotation number 4 to exclude finished products of Allopterox. Obviously this would allow for much easier trade, and quite simply the proposal was accepted with a draft decision inviting parties to report on impacts. It was accepted, but there needs to be some monitoring put in place. The next of South Africa's proposals was that of African grey parrots. The proposal was to extend the decision on trade in captive bred African grey parrots in order to allow South Africa to continue registering captive breeding facilities for commercial trade purposes. So the outcome there, positive again. The document was accepted with minor amendments, and those related to actually the range states for those species. Black rhino, the proposal by South Africa to increase the South Africa's export quota for black rhino hunting trophies from 5 adult male black rhino to a total number of adult black rhino not exceeding 0.5% of the total black rhino population in South Africa in the year of export. So that was accepted, the proposal was accepted, but with a slight amendment. South Africa has to now establish a minimum population size below which hunting will not occur. And of course, every year we have to make sure, if we want to implement a hunting quota, we have to make sure that we've got good monitoring in place, that we are on top of the populations. Because the resolution is around the 0.5% of the population in that year of export. So, some other key proposals that that went to CITES, that were considered at CITES, that affect SADC populations and are relevant to us. There's a proposal by Namibia to transfer their population of southern white rhino from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 with the following annotation: for the exclusive purpose of allowing international trade in live animals to appropriate and acceptable destinations and hunting trophies. Essentially, that's proposing to put their population on the same status as South Africa and Swaziland. So Namibia argued that their white rhino population no longer meets the criteria for being included in Appendix 1. Well, the outcome was the proposal was rejected. All of these go to a vote. The proposal was rejected. The next white rhino, this was a proposal by Eswatini to remove the existing annotation for the population of Eswatini. So I just mentioned the annotation in the previous slide. That's to appropriate destinations, live translocation to appropriate destinations and for hunting trophies. So Eswatini proposed to remove that existing annotation, which effectively would mean that they would be able to trade in rhino horn. So Eswatini motivated that the proceeds from the sale of horn are needed to fund huge security and anti-poaching requirements that will be used to provide sustainable long-term developments in the country, which will strengthen species protection while also benefiting neighboring rural communities. Well, surprise, surprise, although the SADC countries were in support of the proposal was rejected. And that's all by means of voting. And I've mentioned there's secret vote. It's basically a system of where countries can vote in secret so that they can vote one way or the other without being victimized and so on. So even with a secret vote, that proposal was rejected. Then giraffe. Okay, this was proposed by Central African Republic, Chad, Kenya, Mali, Niger and Senegal. Essentially they want to include giraffe in Appendix 2, and that includes all the subspecies. So South Africa's position on this was to reject the proposal, as almost all of the current international trade come from giraffe populations in South Africa, Zimbabwe and Namibia, which are considered either stable or increasing, and South Africa's subspecies remains numerous and widespread throughout Southern Africa. So this one had a bit of debate. So there was an amended proposal to exclude the southern African countries from Appendix 2. So essentially a split listing, but that vote was lost, so we had to go back to the original proposal, which was to list giraffe, and ultimately that was accepted. So giraffe are now, with all the subspecies, are now listed on Appendix 2. Essentially what South Africa now has indicated that, along with other SADC countries, we've indicated that we will submit a reservation to this outcome, but this has not been finalized yet. Okay, moving on to the elephant proposals. There's a few of them. So Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe and South Africa put in a proposal to amend annotation 2 to delete the obsolete text relating to the previous once-off ivory sales. Essentially what it would mean that we'd be able to trade in ivory again. So the proponents argued that they have been amongst the most successful in conserving elephants, and that the proposal be approved to further strengthen their conservation programs through regulated trade in elephant products, and so that benefits can be realized by the owners and managers of these resources. So by vote again, the proposal was rejected. And we're starting to see a trend. Elephant again, but on the other extreme, those Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, etc., those countries actually put in a proposal to transfer Botswana, Namibia, South Africa and Zimbabwe's populations from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. So obviously South Africa opposed that strongly. That went to a vote, and fortunately that was also rejected. So nothing has changed there with elephant. Okay, the next one was by Zambia, and they put in a proposal to move their elephant from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2, right, to trade in registered raw ivory, trade in hunting trophies, trade in hides, leather goods and so on. And again, even though Zambia decided to amend their proposal to remove ivory from the proposal, it was eventually rejected by vote again. So nothing changed there. Then short fin macro shark, relevant to South Africa because of the trade in it. This was proposed by those countries listed there to include short fin macro shark in Appendix 2. So the FAO expert panel opposed this proposal. The IUCN Shark Specialist Group supported the listing, while the Secretariat recommended that the proposal be rejected as they felt that it did not meet the criteria for inclusion in Appendix 2. And of course, South Africa was not in support of the listing. The outcome was that the listing was accepted. So, some concluding remarks. Right, overall 46 proposals to amend appendices were adopted at COP, adding at least 93 new species to the CITES list in Appendix 1 and 2. The number of decisions taken at CITES COP will affect African range states negatively by limiting these countries' ability to trade in species and generate much needed revenue that could be used for conservation purposes. And such decisions, which increasingly seem to be influenced by emotions, politics, animal rights philosophies, rather than science, are bitter pills to swallow for those countries that actually had some conservation successes. So inappropriate listing can further add to the financial burden of a country, as listing species comes with an implementation cost and can also impact negatively on local livelihoods. A recent paper by Challenger and Macmillan found evidence that certain NGOs have sought to abuse CITES in pursuit of campaign victories. As much as NGOs have done a really great job, and we work well with them, government agencies, there are some that have been using CITES as a tool to further their own causes, and that's clear. So we need to endeavour to base our decisions on the most robust science available, while also taking into account socio-economic factors. Thank you.